Hello and welcome back to Drippy Drez. Today I'm going to talk about my rankings of each of the Shrek movies, and I'm just going to give like a brief review on each one. So the first Shrek I thought was pretty good. I mean, I definitely don't agree that it's as great as what the media says it is, but I still like it. I did notice that animation mistake of him having no arrow in his butt in one shot and then an arrow in his butt the next. I mean, to me, that just makes the movie really cheesy because it's supposed to be aimed at adults, and then it really seems like they purposely included that animation mistake just to try to convince us that it's aimed at little kids too. Even though most parents did complain when their kids asked them what a physical relationship was. Speaking of which, I didn't like that part, and I didn't like how Shrek and Fiona fell in love over abusing animals. Neither of those scenes were funny. I just thought that kind of ruined the movie. Like, it made the story a lot more flawed than what it needed to be. I definitely would have liked the movie better if it weren't for those couple things. I'm not sure if I would love it or not. I'd really have to see what it would have been like had it not been for those things. I still thought the animation was pretty decent. I mean, I'm sure it was great at that time period because nobody had ever seen that before. And the music was pretty good. Now, Shrek 2 I thought was absolutely perfect. It had great music, great animation styles, great humor, and great dialogue. This is probably the funniest out of the Shrek series, and I'm not just saying that because it's my favorite. I genuinely think that riding a giant gingerbread cookie to stop the love of your life from marrying the wrong person is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. And I really liked how each of the new characters were woven into the story, and I definitely thought that this one was also the most heartwarming out of the Shrek series, but I'm not sure if that's good or bad because Shrek the Third is the one where they had kids. Like, you would expect that to be the perfect conclusion to the series, but instead it's pretty much just a huge downgrade from the second one. I mean, of course, the concept is great, as you guys saw in my video of why Shrek the Third wasn't canon. I mean, I really hinted at that a lot. It was just the story itself that was bad. And I mean, most of that really was because of the dialogue. Like, I'm sure if it had, like... I take that back. If most of the scenes were the same, but, like, except for the princesses, like if they would have broken out sooner, like, yeah, and if they didn't have those animation mistakes, like if it was mostly the same but it had better dialogue, this one definitely would have been as great as Shrek 2. Like, I know I've heard people complain that it wasn't as funny, and I think the most of the problem was that it tried to be funny even though, like, it didn't really need to be funny because, well, it would be hard to create something that's funnier than Shrek 2, and like most people didn't really see Shrek the Third because they wanted it to be funny. They just wanted to see it because because Shrek 2 ended on a cliffhanger, and they wanted to see what was going to happen after Shrek 2. So all in all, I think 3 did have a lot of potential. It's just that they had bad writers, a bad director, and a bad animator to go along with it. I definitely think that they should remake it into something that people who love Shrek 2 would actually enjoy. And I think instead of trying to be funny, they should just focus on telling a great story and then add humor whenever it's necessary. Because then, like, when it's not as funny as Shrek 2... like, people won't really be disappointed. They'll just be like, oh yeah, that was funny, and you know, this was the story, and instead of being like, wow, this movie tried so hard to be funny and it wasn't that good, blah blah blah. So I would say that 1 is better than 3 because it came first, and like you didn't really know what DreamWorks was capable of at the time. And like with Shrek 1, like after you see their other movies, like you can kind of just brush it off and forget about it. Whereas Shrek the Third, it's like, bruh, how did this happen after Shrek 2? Like, bruh. Like, why would DreamWorks allow this? Are they trying to ruin our lives here? Anyways, Shrek the Halls was definitely an improvement from Shrek the Third. It was definitely funnier. I really liked all the stories that the fairy tale creatures and even Shrek had to tell. My only complaint was Shrek and Fiona still being bad with communication, even though after Shrek 2, it definitely should have improved with that. And I didn't really like how they were back at the swamp, because I didn't really like how they did that in the third one. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe if Shrek the Third was better than Shrek the Halls, like, they would have been better with communication, but they still would have ended up back at the swamp. There would just be a good reason. So all in all, I still like Shrek the Halls. I would say it's better than Shrek 1 in the sense that it's closer to something I would want to watch. But Shrek 1 is a better Shrek movie because it leads to Shrek 2, and that one is great. That one's a standard that the other sequels needed to follow, but they just didn't. Or sequel, I should say, because who knows, if Shrek the Third was better, maybe they wouldn't have needed a fourth one. Speaking of the fourth one, I will admit, Shrek Forever After was better than Shrek the Third. Like, the music actually fit the themes of the story, unlike Shrek the Third, where it was kind of like it fit that scene, but not the whole story. But I still don't think they needed to make Shrek Forever After just to apologize for Shrek the Third. I really think a remake of Shrek the Third would have been enough. I honestly didn't really think most of the jokes were that funny. The only jokes that I really found a lot of humor in were Do the Rar and It's Time to Pay the Piper. The other jokes were just meh. And I definitely didn't think it fit Shrek's character to sign the contract in the first place. So, like, the entire plot of the movie happens over something that didn't fit his character. But I don't really think that that's a good argument for why it was worse than Shrek the Third, because I mean, it didn't really fit his or Fiona's characters to kind of start taking each other for granted. But they still made that. And then Puss in Boots, that one really pissed me off. I mean, I think that was even worse than Shrek the Third, because Shrek Forever After, like, really seemed like it was like, okay, we truly realized what we did was wrong, here's us trying to redeem ourselves. And then Puss in Boots is just like, hey, by the way, we learned nothing. But at least it's comforting to know that Puss in Boots did have a different director than Shrek Forever After, and that was actually the same director that made Shrek the Third, and obviously Shrek the Third had a different director than the first two. Now, I really think that a Puss in Boots movie had a lot of potential. Unfortunately, they just used it to give him a really crappy backstory and to introduce that Humpty Dumpty character. The only great thing about the Puss in Boots movie was Kitty Softpaws, of course, the introduction of her and how at the end she stole his boots. I thought that was funny. The animation was definitely better than Shrek the Third's, but that was like the only advantage it had over it. It was still cheesy, still toxic, wouldn't recommend it for anybody. Now, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, that was definitely better. I really loved the music and animation styles again. I really thought the story was great. My only complaint was that I'm not really sure how I feel about Puss leaving Kitty at the altar. I mean, I understand that was just kind of to show, like, how arrogant he was, but, like, I don't know, just something about... I'm not really sure how I feel about Puss being like that after the events of Shrek 2, but who knows, maybe it just goes to show that, like, he didn't take their relationship personally, and maybe even that this movie takes place in a different dimension, or that he doesn't remember the events of Shrek 2. Now, I really hope that at the ending, like, instead of implying that he was gonna see Shrek and Donkey, I think it would be cool if he went back to see King Arthur and maybe even the villains who redeemed themselves at the end of the third one, and if they could use that as an excuse to remake the third one before continuing that story. So, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was great. Unfortunately, it's just not quite as great as Shrek 2. So, my personal ranking would be Shrek 2, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. It's debatable, but I would say Shrek, Shrek the Halls, Shrek Forever After, Shrek the Third, and then Puss in Boots. Well, I'm sure that some of these rankings are going to stir up a lot of controversy, as I know Shrek the Third is known as the absolute worst, and I'm not sure what people are going to think of me saying that Shrek the Halls is better than Shrek 1 in some ways, but I'm excited to hear what people have to say about it, so feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I can't wait to see what those comments are going to be.